Thank you all for joining us. We will start in the next 5 minutes. In the meantime, can you please leave your name and department name in the questions box? And again, we will start in the next 5 minutes. Thank you for joining. Again, thank you all for joining. If you have just joined us, if you can, please leave your name, introduce yourself in the questions box. We would really appreciate that, but we should start in the next probably 4 minutes, 3 minutes, okay? Thank you all.
Hi, good afternoon. I was just about to say morning. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining this webinar. I still see about 30 people that registered but aren't yet on here. But we're going to go ahead and start in the interest of time. And this webinar is going to be recorded, so we'll make sure to post it and the presentation on the website after for those who couldn't attend or for those who are on it and want more information after. So my name is John Fabiano, and I am the acting Highway Safety Division Manager here in the Office of Grants and Research. This webinar today is about the Municipal Road Safety Grant Program for federal fiscal year 2024. The MISSES grant, as it's come to be known, has quickly become our division's most popular grant, and it's really the best tool that we have in combating the crisis that we face on the state's roadways. While our fatalities have risen for some road users more dramatically than others over the past few years and coming out of the pandemic, the work that's been done by your departments has really helped to form a baseline of knowledge on the state's laws and best practices that we hope will prove useful as we aim to reduce fatalities and injuries on our roads this year and into next. Our MISSES program was recently commended by NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and our federal funding partner for the options that the program provides beyond just traditional enforcement, and for its ability to involve urban, suburban, and rural police departments. As we've continually worked to improve this program, our staff has tried to get out there a lot more often this year to conduct site visits to hear directly from departments and officers working the grants on how we can improve. You'll see some of these improvements incorporated into this year's AGF, like the ability to now purchase PBTs and the addition of January and February as enforcement months. We've also seen a growing number of departments opt in for the non-enforcement activities element, especially with regards to providing educational opportunities in their communities. I think this is awesome, and I hope we see more applications come in with these types of initiatives. One last thing before I turn it over to our MISSES team. With the growing popularity of this grant, we expect this year to be a highly competitive process. I advise you all to be as detailed and thorough as possible in your responses, both on the application and the budget. Many of the people reading and scoring your applications aren't familiar with your work or this grant. Your detailed and complete answers will ensure your application is scored higher and will allow us to award you funds in a timely fashion. Now I'm going to introduce Dama DeKibo. He's 1/3 of our incredibly dedicated MISSES team.
Thank you, John. John's our acting Highway Safety Division Manager. And I would like to introduce myself. My name is Dama DeKibo. I work on the MISSES team, and I also work alongside Andrea Papa, Carrie Mahoney, who we just recently got on our team. And we also work closely with our executive director, Kevin Stanton. In this webinar, we're going to go over just the basis of the grant. First, we'll go over the purpose, the overview, the fact that it's a competitive grant, the background, the different program elements, budgeting, and the application, which is the which also includes the attachment B, which includes the different budget that you would like to set up for this grant. And just to reiterate that this safety as a police officer is one of your top priorities, especially road safety. And the MISSES grant gives departments flexibility to handle the different road safety problems of your community. So again, the The Mrs. Grant is a very flexible grant that allows you to address the different areas of concern with road safety in your town. Each town or city is different. With this grant, we hope to address the road safety issues in Mass and nationally. And also, I wanted to say that enforcement is a critical element of this grant and gives departments an opportunity to go out and enforce traffic laws while also bringing knowledge and representation in your community. So overview, our funds for this grant all come from NHTSA, which is the National Highway Safety Association. NHTSA has given us for FFY24 $5.5 million for this grant. And for this grant, the Mrs. Grant, all municipal police departments are eligible to apply in the state of Massachusetts. And this grant is also a competitive grant. So like John stated, the more effort into your application, the better off you will be. And again, as we said, this is a competitive grant. Our application process begins with the submission. Our whole process begins with the application. And from there, we have a team of internal interviewers that grade each department's application. After each department is given their grade, we turn it over to our executive director, Kevin Stanton, and the secretary of EOPS, and they have the final decision on awarding. Please also refer to the selection criteria in the AGF when going through this process. So a little background in regarding the Mrs. program. It first launched in FFY 2021, and in this current grant period, we have 169 departments with a total funding award of 4.3 million. This grant has always supported HVE for traffic enforcement and ped and bike enforcement. And like we said, this gives, and we have a flexible budgets for non-enforcement activities and strategies like bike rodeos or anything that can relate to traffic safety. And this grant also allows for purchase of specific traffic enforcement equipment and ped and bike safety equipment. This year, we'll allow for 6 different items of traffic enforcement equipment purchases through this grant and ped and bike items. So here are the different elements of the Mrs. program. Element 1, which is traffic enforcement and equipment. Element 2, ped and bikes enforcement. Element 3, non-enforcement safety activities and ped and bike safety items. The Mrs. program was designed as almost a pick and choose program, and whatever needs or every need in each community will be different. So it's up to you guys to decide on the different needs that you will be applying for. All sections are optional, and as we have tried to stress, this grant will give you flexibility to spend your budget however you choose to address your community's needs. So the first element, which is enforcement, there's one enforcement budget for all campaigns. Enforcement awards are no longer split into strict budgets, and funds can be used during any campaign. All campaigns are equal. No campaign is greater than the other, so this gives you a chance to strategize how you would like to distribute these traffic enforcement funds each campaign. So traffic enforcement, we have an open budget, as we said, for traffic enforcement. Department's amount budgeted for traffic enforcement will roll over from campaign to campaign. A combined 30 hours of enforcement is required throughout the 6 campaigns. For equipment purchases, which also tie in with traffic enforcement, in order to qualify for equipment, you will need to apply for traffic enforcement. And the catch is that your equipment budget can only be 50% of what you budgeted for traffic enforcement. And then another thing to note is that all equipment must be received by April 30th, 2024. Each equipment item must cost less than $5,000 per NHTSA. And we also will require quotes for each proposed purchase of equipment. So this year, we have added 2 new types of traffic enforcement equipment, the PBT and also subscription softwares for radar signs or data recorders. But in previous years, like many of you know, the allowable equipment items are handheld radar units, handheld LiDAR units, pole-mounted radar speed signs, traffic data recorders, and as I just said, PBT and subscriptions to radar signs or traffic recorders. So I'm going to pass this over to my coworker, Andrea Papa, and she's going to go over the other elements that we have, starting with pet and bike enforcement.
Hi, I'm Andrea Papa. I just wanted to give you guys a reminder that if you have any questions as we're talking, that you can please enter them into the chat and question box, and then we will answer them as they come. There will also be time to ask in the chat box after the presentation. So for element 2, we have ped and bike enforcement. So as you can see, January and February campaigns have been added so that you guys can conduct more ped and bike enforcement, and that they don't overlap with the June and July months this year. And then for element 3, so element 3 will consist of 2 parts this year. The first will be the non-enforcement activities part, and the second will be the purchase of ped and bike safety items. This element is optional, but we encourage departments to apply for non-enforcement funds. And then there's also a link in the AGF to NHTSA's countermeasures that work guide that can help you get ideas for what types of non-enforcement activities you could utilize in your communities. So this element is intended to be an opportunity for police departments to positively engage with their local communities, promote and educate the public on traffic safety issues, and also encourage potential change in road user behaviors. When applying for this element, the anticipated costs associated with an activity must be clearly defined in your budget. And this is a pretty flexible element in terms of what is allowable, but all activities and trainings you plan for in this section must be reasonable and have a connection to traffic and road safety awareness and education. If applying for funds in this category, we encourage you to look at the countermeasures that work, and then also review the AGF non-enforcement section for ideas on what types of non-enforcement activities you can do. But here's like a short list of things that you can do, like working with nonprofits, attending an A-ride class, hosting a bike rodeo. There's really a lot of options that you can do. And then we encourage you to also just like get creative with this. Yeah. And then part 2 of the non-enforcement element is where you can request funds to purchase ped and bike safety items that are intended to provide protection, enhance nighttime visibility, and educate the public on safe practices and pedestrian and bike laws. We encourage you to purchase safety items and incorporate those into a non-enforcement activity, like purchasing bike helmets and giving them out at a bike rodeo in your town. When you apply for these items, you must support your purchase of these items based on a specific problem in your community and include a distribution plan. There should be an educational component to how you distribute them. And this year, while there's no limit on the amount of safety items that you can purchase, your request must be reasonable, and the distribution plan must justify the amount being requested. So the types of things that you can purchase, like bike helmets, lights, and then there's a more extensive list in the AGF that you can look at. And then we also want to convey to you that the purchase of the ped bike safety items is not meant to just be like some sort of free giveaway in your town, but it should be used to provide education to your communities. For this year, we edited Tier 1 and Tier 2 maximum award amounts that you can apply for. So Tier 1 will now be awarded up to $60,000 and Tier 2 will be awarded up to $40,000. Just please keep this in mind when you're filling out your budgets. As I said before, a department can participate in 1, 2, or 3 elements and decide how much funding you want to use towards each component. And a lot of times throughout the grant year, departments will ask if they can adjust their budget, their budgeted amounts for each element or roll over funds into another element. And unfortunately, that's not allowed. So please try to have like a good plan for the whole year of how you're going to use your grant funds because we can't roll over those amounts. So this is a competitive grant, as we said before, and your application will be reviewed and scored by a team of reviewers in our office. So we suggest that you read thoroughly through the application before you start answering questions. And this part can get kind of confusing, but all applicants have to complete questions 1 through 6 and then 11 through 13. And then depending on which element you're applying for, you can skip questions. So if you're not applying for a non-enforcement, you could skip question 7, so on, so on. If you look at the AGF also, we give examples of how to complete your budget based on which elements you're applying for. We also encourage you to look at that before filling out your budget and application. So I'm gonna walk you through the application by pulling it up. So this is the 2024 application, which you, if you've already been to the website, have already seen. It's pretty similar to last year, but there are some changes. So if you have any questions about that, please write that in the question chat, and also I'll try to go through this pretty quickly. So the first sheet is just contact information. The UEI number, which we get a lot of questions about, is we basically, if you can't locate that yourself, we ask that you reach out to your municipal fiscal contact, and they should have that number for you. But basically, just contact information on the first page. The second page, you are going to mark off which elements you're applying for, and then again, questions 1 through 6 and 11 through 14 have to be answered. And then for question 2, provide a clear and concise description of your department's philosophy and commitment to all aspects of road safety. We also ask that you include how your grants are going to augment your existing efforts to reduce roadway crashes, injuries, fatalities, and associated economic losses, and also how your MRS funds awarded to your department in 2023 or prior have had an impact on your community. And that's only if you had gotten FY23 funds. Question 3, we ask that you go to the MassDOT crash portal impact and then click on this link, and then it's going to give you the data for your town. It looks like this. And then basically you could select a town, whatever town you are applying for, and I think we ask that you do 2020 to 2023 too. Yes, 2022, sorry. And then you can view a report, and then it should give you all that information, and then you can just fill that in on the application. And it's going to take forever to load, but yeah. So it should give you that information, and then you should be able to fill that in. Get back to the application. Fill that in, and then question 4, this is your department's internal data, and then we just ask that you complete as much of it as you can that you have from your department. For number 5, we ask that you enter 3 measurable target objectives, and these need to be pretty specific, especially towards your town's goals and stuff, because they are important, and NHTSA does appreciate when you guys have these measurable target objectives and you are actually working towards completing them throughout the grant year. And we also ask because for these right now, because throughout the year, you're gonna have a mid-year report, and we're also gonna check in on how you guys have been doing on these measurable target objectives. And also at the end of the year, we're gonna check in. So it's really important to make these specific, not just something that, you know, doesn't make sense really, and to actually put a lot of time and effort into that. And then question 6, identify 3 problematic road safety trends that exist in your community, pertaining to demographics, location, day of the week, time or day, the time of day, and then the trends also must relate to the elements that you're requesting. We provide some examples for you right here that you can look at before you fill this in. And then question 7, if proposing to utilize grant funds for non-enforcement traffic safety activities, provide the following details for each budgeted activity. So if you're not applying for if you don't apply for non-enforcement, you can skip this, but basically just describe the activity, as much information as you can about it, and then describe why you are proposing to conduct this activity and then what you hope it accomplishes. And then if you're requesting traffic equipment, please state the quantity next to the type of equipment being requested, and you must also provide the quantity and approximate age of your current inventory. Those are just approximate ranges of how long you think you've had them. But yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. Question 9, explain how the equipment requested will augment the planned enforcement. So you have to give us some sort of justification for why you're applying for the equipment that you are. And then also give us some sort of plan of how and where the equipment will be used. We also give you some examples there. Question 10, if your department is budgeting for pet and bike safety items, provide the justification for why the items are being needed, the quantity, and also the distribution plan that I had talked about before, including who you're going to be giving them to, how you're going to be distributing them, and any educational component that you're going to include with that. Question 11 is pretty self-explanatory. Just check yes or no if you're using the MAX program. Question 12, this is where you're going to provide a little bit of a timeline for us of all of the elements and activities that you're applying for. And for traffic and pet and bike enforcement, indicate the type of enforcement and the total hours planned. And then for equipment or safety items, enter the item and plan to purchase in the appropriate month. And then please note that these items have to be received by April 30th, 2024. And then for non-enforcement activities, just enter the name and activity in whichever month you plan to conduct those activities. And then in the budget narrative, so use the space below to describe how your department intends to use budgeted funds, provide a description and explain all requested line items included in the attachment B budget. This is basically, if you didn't get a chance to explain something else throughout the application, you can use this space to expand upon your ideas, kind of give us a summary of everything. We don't just want a list of everything you're going to purchase that's copied from some other part of the application, but really try to use this to summarize and bring together your thoughts about what you're applying for and why. And then we're going to go over the attachment B on the next slide, but Also, you need to submit an attachment B, basically outlining your budget based on your tier amounts, how much you can apply for. And then this is the final page, the assurances page. You have to fill this out and sign and date this. And then just more information that we'll go over in the next slides about what components you need to submit, how you submit them, and then this is important at the bottom. Oh, wait, no. Right here, there is a civil road safety. Oh, is there no? Oh, never mind. But there is a contact sheet that you have to also fill out when you submit your application, and I'll provide that link to you. Okay, now we'll go to the attachment B, and Dama's going to explain that.
Yes, so for the attachment B, this is an Excel worksheet, just a budget of your planned activity and purchases during the grant year. Before you start the attachment B, you should always identify tier and maximum award, fill in the appropriate cost categories, and summary page will populate from cost categories, and also do not alter anything other than department name. So we will go over that attachment B document. Just bear with us. So as you can see, when you open the attachment B, the first tab right here will give you an explanation on the different banners that you might encounter. You might get a yellow one or a red one. They're just telling you to enable the editing and enable the content. So you will go ahead and click on those. The next tab is the budget summary. This page will populate all the information you put in on the next tab on the budget detail, but the only thing you need to input in the budget summary is the bear with us 1 second. Give me 1 moment, I'm so sorry. Yes, I'm so sorry. Just bear with us for 1 moment. I'm just trying to get the correct version. Thank you all for your patience. Just a couple of technical difficulties, as you all understand. Like I said, when you open this document, you'll get a yellow banner. You just hit enable, yes. And so we'll start with the budget summary tab at the bottom, as I showed you. Only thing you will need to input on this tab is your department's name. So let's just make up a town, Happyville, Mass. Okay. After you put in your department's name, you'll move on to the budget detail. So this town of Happyville wants to, let's say, budget for TE equipment, pet and bike, non-enforcement, pet and bikes and safety items, and also consultant and contractor costs. So we'll go over all those different categories. In the TE overtime, as we have said, this is from campaign to campaign, the budget rolls over. So there's one budget for all of these 6 different campaign periods. So in this column, you would input the OT rate for all your officers, the average OT rate. So let's say in Happyville, the average OT rate is 44. So I'll input that for every line because we're going to participate in every campaign. But then for the planned OT hours, this will be a discussion amongst the department to plan on what campaign will need more enforcement than the other. So say in this town of Happyville, we have a problem of speeding, especially during the summer months. We'll try to dedicate more hours during those months. So say in December, we're going to do 10, distracted driving, 10 hours, click it or ticket, 10 hours, and then speed, June and July, we're going to up it to 20. And then summer impaired, we're going to just go back down to 10. As you can see, the total for the traffic enforcement of overtime for Happyville is 3,520. And so we're satisfied with that. Now we're trying to find out what we want to get reimbursed, what type of equipment we want to get reimbursed for. So we have a need for a LiDAR in this town, and say we're buying one, and the cost per unit, and then the quantity would be the amount of the LiDAR, which let's say is 1,500. And then if you want, well, please include maybe the manufacturer's name. So we're going to get it from LaserTech. And then as you can see, we're budgeting for 1,500 for a LiDAR. The next one is pet and bike enforcement. This is an open budget, just like TE. And again, our average OT rate in Happyville is 44. Planned OT hours for pet and bike, we plan on doing 30. And again, we have 1,320 that we plan on getting reimbursed for our officers' shifts of OT during pet and bike, the different pet and bike campaigns. Now we're going to move on to non-enforcement safety activities. So we have a couple of officers that want to go to A-Ride training. So in the activity box, you'll put training. Training, and then we're going to say A-Ride training, and then the rate is 44 for our average of all our officers usually, and then the amount of hours is the quantity. So these A-Rides are usually 2-day training, and we plan on sending 2 officers at an OT rate. So we're going to go for 32 hours. And then in the description, we'll put 2 officers to attend 2-day training. And then in parentheses, we'll put average OT rate is 44. And then as you can see, it populates for the subtotal of this category, which is 1,408. The next category we're also going to apply for is pet and bike safety in this town. Pet and bike safety items in this town. And You can apply for many things like helmets, uh, lights for bicycles, educational pamphlets, things of that sort that bring pet and bike safety to your towns. But in this town, they want to apply for helmets, and we'll put cost per unit, which is how much does each helmet cost, and we'll say $29. And then the quantity, we want to get 30. And as you can see, we have a total of 870 that we plan on getting reimbursed for helmets. I want you guys to also note that for pet and bike safety items and traffic equipment, traffic enforcement equipment, that this should be an estimate, and also just take into fact that this is for next year and just the state of like the country and how things work. There's always an increase with things, so plan ahead, probably budget a little bit more just to give you a little leeway so you're not going over the budget. The next category we're going to talk about is consultant and contractor costs. And this is if you enter a contract with a vendor to bring some type of service of traffic enforcement awareness. So say we went into a contract with Safe, Happyville went into a contract with Safe vendor called Safe Drive, and this vendor is going to do an educational event at a high school for road and safety. We will just put that in, contractor to run educational event at high school on road safety. And then in the rate, it's going to be whatever the invoice for them to do this event is going, whatever the rate is going to be, whatever the cost is on the invoice for them to do the service for you guys. So say they're charging us $2,000 for this 1-day event at the high school, and we'll just put 1, and then as you can see, it's $2,000. I know on the application there isn't anywhere to talk about what you, if you get into a contract with a vendor, but we encourage you to put that information under non-enforcement and also speak about it in the budget narrative. And if you plan on doing this element, just also realize that the more information, the better. So I would encourage you guys to practice who, what, when, where, and why with this vendor, okay? And then all our data is in that we are budgeting for. We'll go back to the budget summary. And as I said before, this automatically populates. So traffic enforcement overtime, traffic equipment, pet and bike overtime, non-enforcement safety activities, pet and bike items, and contractor costs all for a total of $10,618. When you're satisfied with that, to get the printout of this, you would just press save as PDF. This will bring up a PDF that will also be saved to your desktop. And as you can see, just print this off and submit it with the application, okay? Also in this spreadsheet, there's also the timeline for the different elements. So as you can see, traffic enforcement, pet and bike enforcement, TE, whenever TE equipment, when you can buy TE equipment, when you can do a non-enforcement activity, when you can buy pet and bike safety items, and also when the reports due. And on this page, they just give you a little brief information about the different elements. So feel free to refer to this page as well.
Okay. So for submitting your application, so once it is completely filled out and reviewed by you, you must submit one copy of your application packet to the OGR email listed on the slide, and it must be before June 29th. And then one hard copy must be either mailed to our office or hand delivered. Please note that we moved offices from the 10 Park Plaza in Boston office, and we're now located at the address listed here in Braintree. If you choose to mail your application, it must be postmarked by June 29th. So here you can see all of the components of your application packet that you will need to submit to us in order to have a completed application. This is also listed in the AGF. And this is also a reminder to fill out the contract information electronic form that can be found at this link that I was talking about before, at the bottom of this, this slide. And then here you can also see the key dates for the 2024 MRS grant year. Please note that the dates for award announcements and contract start dates are tentative, and your department cannot spend any grant funds until you receive your fully executed contract. And then, as always, just please feel free to contact Dama, myself, or Kerry if you have any questions while completing and submitting your applications. And then you can also email us individually or at the OGR email. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so at this moment, we'll take time to answer any questions that you guys have if they haven't been answered, but please feel free to leave them in the questions box. So we're going to read off a couple of questions we've gotten from you guys that have been answered and that are still coming in that could be helpful to you all. So the first question is, does the general sub-recipient grant conditions need to be submitted with the application? No. For now, those are just an FYI. If you are selected to receive an award, you will fill them out during the contracting process.
And then is there a cap on pet and bike safety items? Appendix B only allows for 1,500 in this category. There's no cap on this for this year. Obviously, it has to be like a reasonable request, but Appendix B was recently updated. So there's been a new version of that updated on the website, and that will let you go past the 1,500 in that category. And you still just need, you know, like as we said, a reasonable and a justifiable distribution plan.
And this is another great question about purchasing a piece of equipment on element 3, a distracted driving simulator to run a high school students and citizens through the simulator. This is they're trying to purchase some safety, a simulator. For questions like this, we would have to always check with NHTSA, but we will make sure we share the answer with all of you soon. And once we get a answer from NHTSA, we'll let everyone know about this. But at the moment, we just cannot say yay or nay, but it does sound like, honestly, it does sound like something that will be allowable.
In 2023, we were allowed to roll over unspent funds from, for example, distracted driving to click it or ticket. 24, is this now not allowed? So no, you can still do that. You can still have the questions. I'm sorry, you can still spend the funds in for enforcement in any of the months. It's just that the elements you can't roll over funds into each element. So there is still one traffic budget for the whole year that you can roll funds into from distracted driving to click it or ticket.
Another question about under the equipment list, would it be allowed for motorcycle officers to get communications mounted to their helmets? It's better, allows them to communicate while on motorcycles during the campaigns. Unfortunately for this grant period, we won't be able to allow that, but in the future, we will consider this and bring this up to NHTSA. But thank you for that great question as well.
Okay. If an officer goes to A-ride on his regular covered shift, will you pay for his regular rate or pay for the officer who has to cover their shift while in the A-ride course? So no, we do not pay regular shifts, only overtime. And we do not pay for backfill. This is a NHTSA thing. Federal funds can only pay for highway safety specific activities and not general services.
And another question we got, would painting of crosswalks be allowable? And if so, would it be in category ped and bike? No, this wouldn't be allowed. This is more of a DOT thing. And I know there's rules and restrictions with that. So yeah, they would handle that. So unfortunately, we can't allow that.
In regards to the authorized signatory listing form, do you need anything notarized from the authorized signatories? So you don't need to notarize it, but there is a section that I believe still on that form where you can have it notarized if you choose to do so. And then from the authorized signatories, can the chief sign off on this list of signatories, or does it need to be the town manager? It can be really anyone. The chief is already is already authorized to do so.
And this is a question about cloud subscription. Can this be applied to new equipment purchased with this year's grant? If purchased a pole-mounted speed radar system with last year's grant, we cannot use funds to continue that subscription. And this is correct. Yeah, you can use this this element of subscriptions for that year.
Where do we get a copy of this presentation? We're going to load it onto the same website where you can find the AGF and application, and it will be posted after we finish this this session for you guys to go back to and look at.
And are crosswalk lights allowed? Again, no. With crosswalks, this is a DOT thing.
Where can we find the ISA form? You don't need an ISA form. We apologize if that was referenced somewhere, but ISAs are for state agencies and not for police departments.
And then how about funding for LiDAR holsters for motorcycle officers? Yeah, this sounds like an add-on purchase. We'll just need more information on that. Just maybe put it in below. Let's
Why do you not provide the opportunity for departments to purchase vehicle radars? This is all in NHTSA. We have to follow NHTSA's rules for this grant, and these purchases are intended for specific mobilizations and not for everyday use.
So here's another good question. Can we conduct TE in the months of January through March? And unfortunately not, we do not have campaigns through January through March in TE, but you can always apply for pet and bike enforcement.
Can a mountain bike be purchased to be used for traffic enforcement? No, that if it's not listed in the AGF under the equipment, then it's not something you can purchase.
So here's another question. Did I understand correctly that equipment requests must be less than 50% of the total grant? No, equipment must be 50% less than the total that you're applying for TE enforcement. So you cannot go over 50% of what you budgeted for the TE enforcement.
Can the non-enforcement activity funding be used to train officers on car seat installation? Yes, as long as it's done on overtime. Backfill is not allowed.
I'm gonna email it. And so there's some great questions from Peter. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, Abbas Koran. If you could please just email your question to OGR and we can just get clarification on what you're asking and we can give you a correct answer, okay? But please feel free, Peter, to email your question to OGR and we'll respond to you.
In answering the questions, the boxes only allow so many characters and words. Do we have to adhere to that or add a separate page in the grant application? So you can go over that if you wanted to add another page. We apologize that it restricts you to only so many characters, but yeah, you can add another page.
So thank you all for your questions. We'll continue to answer questions if you have any, or if we missed any, please just either resubmit these questions or put your questions in the questions box. But again, thank you all for joining this webinar and we will stay on for another 10 minutes to address any more questions you have.
So if there's any last minute questions, please type them in the chat and we'll try to answer them. But we are gonna end this in a few minutes, so try to get your questions in if you have any.
Again, thank you all for your time. I know you guys have busy schedules, but if you have any additional questions, please feel free to email either myself, Andrea, Carrie, or the OGR mailbox for this grant. We're going to end this webinar, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day.